Hi, welcome to my channel. Today we will unlock the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. Are you tired of the constant pressure to care about everything and everyone? Feeling overwhelmed by the endless stream of expectations and obligations? In a world where we constantly desire to please everyone around us, it is easy to lose sight of what genuinely matters. It is time to break free and discover the power of prioritizing what truly matters in life. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck is not your average self-help book. Instead, it offers a refreshing and brutally honest perspective on choosing what truly matters. Manson argues that by caring too much about everything, we end up overwhelmed, stressed, and ultimately unhappy. The key to a better life, he says, is to learn how to prioritize the things we genuinely care about and let go of the rest. Mark Manson is a highly acclaimed author, blogger, and personal development consultant. Throughout the book, Manson shares compelling stories, real-life examples, and thought-provoking insights to guide us in re-evaluating our values and making better choices. He explores the consequences of holding onto shitty values, such as chasing pleasure, material success, always being right, and staying positive. These unhealthy values will lead to unfulfilling pursuits, superficiality, and a lack of genuine happiness and personal growth. Recognizing and replacing these values with healthier ones can create a more meaningful life filled with long-term happiness and personal growth. One of the core messages in The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck is the importance of embracing negative emotions. Instead of suppressing or avoiding these feelings, Manson encourages us to confront and work through them. This approach not only fosters emotional resilience but also deepens connections with others and promotes self-awareness. Manson also highlights the power of saying no and setting boundaries between relationships. By learning to reject the things that don't align with our values, we can strengthen our sense of self and live a more authentic life. The book delves into the psychology behind the paradox of choice, explaining how having too many options can lead to anxiety and dissatisfaction. By limiting our choices to the things that truly matter, we can experience greater freedom and satisfaction. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck has sold over 6 million copies worldwide and spent over 200 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. Its immense success has resonated with us from all walks of life, inspiring us to embrace a more authentic, fulfilling existence. Are you ready to discover the life-changing power of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck? Now, we are going to unscramble the significant elements of the book in 5 aspects. Part 1. Select what you care. Part 2. Embrace life suffering. Part 3. Have the right values. Part 4. Take responsibility for yourself. Part 5. Refuse and be refused. In this chapter, we will explore the central idea revealed in the book title, which is not giving a FCK. It is funny how we always care about what we lack in life. The more we think of ourselves as poor, the more we aspire to be rich. The uglier we think we are, the more we crave a good looking. The lonelier we think we are, the more we crave love and care. We tend to spend our lives trying to have more positive experiences, which, according to the author, is a negative experience. Conversely, accepting a negative experience is itself a positive experience. Have you ever noticed that sometimes you do better at something when you don't give a FCK about it? The author gives us an example of Charles Bukowski, which proves backwards law. He is an American poet, novelist, and short story writer known for his raw, gritty, and brutally honest literary style. Bukowski spent much of his life in dead-end jobs, struggling with alcoholism, gambling, and poverty. His works were repeatedly rejected. Despite this, he continued writing and eventually succeeded in his 50s. What is interesting about Bukowski is that he didn't hide his flaws or try to project an image of perfection. Instead, he embraced and incorporated his struggles into his work, resonating with a wide audience. He accepted the fact that he was a failure and didn't care about whether he had succeeded or not. That's the key to his success. His story itself is backwards law. This idea, originally formulated by the British philosopher Alan Watts, states that the more we pursue a particular feeling or outcome, the more elusive it becomes. In other words, the harder we try to achieve something, the less likely we will succeed. In today's world, people are constantly bombarded with messages that they need more to be happy, successful, or fulfilled. They are told to buy more things, work longer hours, and achieve higher levels of success to be truly content with their lives. However, this constant focus on getting more can lead people to overlook the truly important things in life, such as their health, relationships, and personal growth. We constantly compare ourselves to others, which only creates negative psychological feedback. When people are solely focused on achieving external markers of success, they may neglect their own needs and the needs of those around them. This can result in feelings of emptiness, loneliness, and disconnection from themselves and others. Once we care about too many things, we might start to feel like we deserve to be happy and comfortable all the time, and we might get really upset when things don't go our way. It can be a big problem because life is full of ups and downs, and not everything is always going to be perfect. If we get too caught up in our own feelings and expectations, we might start to constantly feel like we are not living up to our expectations, and we will end up feeling really unhappy and frustrated all the time. Friends, if you want to read these books but are short of time, then I have brought the key points of this book for you, which is the main point of the entire book. Reading it is equivalent to reading the entire book. If you want to buy, you will find the link in the description box and comment box, and it is only a limited time offer, so hurry up. However, it doesn't mean we don't care about anything and don't work hard at it. Finding more important and meaningful things to focus on in life is the most effective way to make the best use of our time and energy. Not giving a FCK doesn't equal being indifferent, but admitting the fact that we are different from others, like Charles Bukowski. He knew he was different and that, unlike most people in society, he didn't care about success. It is actually about being picky with what you choose to care about. So, what exactly should we care about? What are more important and meaningful things that deserve our attention? The answer is the stuff that really matters to you, the things that line up with your values and help you grow as a person. Everyone's priorities and values will be different. They might be your families, your friends, or your golf swing. Yeah, the golf swing is what the author, Mark Manson, cares about. Remember that what is important and meaningful to one person might not be the same for another. Take some time to reflect on your own values, priorities, and goals to determine what truly matters to you. Focusing on these meaningful areas can create a more fulfilling and satisfying life. In short, it is significant for us to remember that true happiness and fulfillment come from within, and that material possessions and external achievements are not the most important. By prioritizing our physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being, we can cultivate a sense of inner peace and contentment that can't be found in the pursuit of external accomplishments. To begin with, in this chapter, we want to ask a question. What's happiness? How do you measure happiness? We tend to think that happiness can be achieved through various stages of the effort. If I work hard and earn money to buy the luxurious handbag I want, I will be happy. If I keep studying and am enrolled in my dream school, I will be happy. If I am as handsome as Tom Cruise, I will be happy. But therein lies the problem. According to the author, such happiness is temporary. Happiness, unlike mathematics, cannot be calculated. Happiness itself is actually a problem. Have you ever felt that when you are constantly chasing happiness, and it just seems to slip through your fingers? It is like running on a treadmill, never quite reaching the finish line. The author, Manson, has got an interesting take on this whole pursuit of happiness thing. He says that when we are always after those happy moments, we actually end up focusing on what is missing in our lives, and that can be a real downer. Instead, Manson suggests that we should focus on embracing life's inevitable struggles and suffering, which can lead to personal growth and genuine happiness. Pain is the norm of our lives. The author shares the story of a prince who lived in a luxurious palace surrounded by wealth and abundance. The story of the prince is actually based on the life of Siddhartha Gautama, who later became the Buddha. Siddhartha was born into a royal family, living a life of luxury and privilege. His father, the king, did everything he could to shield him from any form of suffering or hardship, wanting his son to experience only happiness and comfort. However, Siddhartha felt a sense of unease and dissatisfaction, sensing that there must be more to life than the opulent existence he had within the palace walls. Driven by curiosity, he left the palace to explore the world outside, disguising himself as a commoner. Then the prince began his life of suffering. After witnessing the suffering of the people of the world, he sat under a tree for 49 days, during which he had several profound realizations. One of these realizations was that life is inherently a form of suffering, regardless of one's circumstances. Everyone suffers in some way, whether due to riches, poverty, family, or lack of family, and pursuing or abstaining from worldly pleasures can lead to suffering. 2. In addition, the author analyzes the benefits of suffering from a biological perspective. Suffering can help us grow as people. You know that saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger?" Well, it is kind of true. When we face challenges and come out on the other side, we learn valuable life lessons and build resilience. Physically, pain teaches us what to pay attention to. For example, we don't want to touch a hot water bottle after we have burned our hands. Psychologically, the emotional pain of rejection or failure can teach us to make fewer of the same mistakes in the future. It is like leveling up in a video game. The more we overcome, the better equipped we are to handle whatever life throws at us next. In fact, life is just one pain after another. So, we need to recognize the pain and be willing to deal with the pain. But the truth is, many of us can't because denial and victim mentality get in the way. Denial is when you are just pretending something isn't happening, even when it is staring you right in the face. It is like when you ignore that weird noise your car is making, hoping it will magically fix itself. People do this because it is easier than facing tough emotions, but it can stop them from actually dealing with the problem. Now, about the victim mentality. Some people would always think the world is out to get them. They feel like they are constantly under attack and can't catch a break. They are always blaming someone or something else for their issues instead of taking responsibility for their choices. These two kinds of thinking are common traps that people fall into. Then, how to deal with the pain? The only way, according to the author, is to struggle. Instead of focusing on what we want to accomplish, we should ask ourselves the question, what can we do to achieve what we want? What struggle can I make to achieve such happiness? It is a crucial aspect that we often overlook but is truly important. If you want to get in shape, you might ask yourself what exercises you are willing to do regularly and how much sweat and sore muscles you can endure achieving a healthier body. To save for a dream vacation, you could ponder over which non-essential expenses you are willing to cut back on, like skipping your morning coffee or eating out less, to reach your savings goal. Constantly solving problems, the process itself is happiness. It is the basic logic. It is often our struggle that determines whom we become, yet many of us only see the results we want to achieve. What we need to remember is that there is no ending to life's problems and pains. Therefore, instead of thinking that we can get eternal happiness after solving a certain problem, we should think about what kind of struggle we choose to solve problems and feel happiness and joy during the process. Just as the author says, the joy is in the climb itself. This chapter mainly discusses the question of values. Picture an onion, it has got all those layers, right? Well, self-awareness is just like that. It is not just one thing, it is made up of different layers that help us understand ourselves better. So, the first layer of our onion is all about knowing our emotions. It is like being in tune with how we are feeling and figuring out what is causing those emotions. We can feel our emotions like happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy. Next up is the second layer, where we start to question our emotions and dig deeper into why we feel a certain way. Why am I happy? Why get angry? Is it because I failed to do something? It helps us learn about our values and beliefs. Now, we are getting to the core, the third layer. This is where the magic happens, and we start to challenge our values and beliefs. We ask ourselves why I consider this a success and that a failure. How do I measure myself? By what standards do I judge myself and those around me? What causes us to feel this way? Mark Manson highlights the significance of values as the guiding principles that shape our lives. The values we choose to prioritize can lead to different outcomes, happiness or negative experiences. To be the way you want to be or to look at things from a different angle, we essentially have to change our values and the way we measure ourselves. Different values and metrics lead to different results. Some values and measures create difficulties that are easily resolved, while others create difficulties that are difficult to resolve. The author gives us two examples of rock singers who were dropped from the band. The first example is Dave Mustaine, the original lead guitarist for Metallica. Mustaine was fired from the band in 1983 due to his substance abuse and clashes with other band members. The incident left him feeling bitter and vengeful. fueling his ambition to create a band that would surpass Metallica. Mustaine went on to form Megadeth, which became a highly successful and an influential heavy metal band. Despite Megadeth's numerous accomplishments, which included millions of records sold and several Grammy nominations, Mustaine still struggled with feelings of resentment and envy towards Metallica. He saw his achievements as not enough when compared to the massive success of his former band. This constant comparison led to Mustaine's dissatisfaction and unhappiness. In a 2003 interview, when asked if he considered himself a failure, he confirmed it solely because he couldn't surpass Metallica's achievements. The second example is Pete Best, the original drummer of the Beatles. Pete Best was part of the Beatles from 1960 to 1962, playing on the band's early recordings and performances. However, in 1962, just before the band skyrocketed to fame, Best was ejected by 3 other band members and was suddenly replaced by Ringo Starr. The unexpected dismissal was devastating for Best, as he watched the Beatles become a global phenomenon without him. But unlike Dave Mustaine, Pete Best chose a different path. Instead of dwelling on his misfortune, Best eventually found new ways to move forward in his life. He continued to play music, forming new bands and performing in various venues. Best also got married and started a family, finding happiness in building a life outside of the spotlight. Later, he even considered himself lucky not to belong to one of the Beatles, because if he hadn't been kicked out of the band, he wouldn't be as happy as he is now. Why? What is the difference in values between the two of them that makes them think so differently? The key that led to their contrasting perspectives lies in their focus and how they measured success and personal fulfillment. Dave Mustaine's values centered around external validation and comparison to others. He was driven by the desire to outshine Metallica and prove himself more successful. This constant comparison made it difficult for him to appreciate his own achievements with Megadeth. Mustaine's happiness was contingent on surpassing Metallica, which created a sense of dissatisfaction and unhappiness despite his considerable accomplishments. On the other hand, Pete Best focused on internal fulfillment and personal growth after his dismissal from the Beatles. He didn't dwell on the fame he missed out on, nor did he constantly compare himself to the Beatles. Instead, Best valued his relationships, personal passions, and finding new opportunities to grow and contribute. By prioritizing these values, he could find happiness and contentment in his life, irrespective of external circumstances. As can be seen from the above 2 stories, happiness and success will come naturally as long as the values and metrics are set in a scientific way, and bad values bring bad problems to people in turn. For example, there is nothing wrong with enjoying life, but constantly chasing pleasure and instant gratification can leave us feeling empty and unfulfilled. Besides, it is easy to think that having lots of money or fancy possessions will make us happy, but they are just temporary fixes. And we are always told to be positive. While optimism is great, it can be harmful when we force ourselves to ignore negative emotions or pretend everything is okay when it is not. All these shitty values about pleasure, material success, and staying positive impact our lives. Therefore, how can we distinguish between good values and bad values? Or good values? According to Mark Manson, good values are those that are reality-based, socially constructive, and controllable by the individual. They encourage personal growth and meaningful relationships and positively contribute to the world. Examples of good values include honesty, empathy, self-discipline, and humility. By contrast, bad values are often superficial, self-centered, or based on external factors that are beyond our control. To distinguish between good and bad values, we should examine whether our values are grounded in reality, promote personal development, and benefit others. Adopting good values helps us lead more fulfilling lives, navigate challenges, and build stronger connections with those around us. When we start to change our values and change what we care about, we may doubt ourselves, and we may also feel a sense of failure because everything is based on our old values. But we should know that this is the beginning of a good change. So don't resist change. Keep at it, and good things will happen. To conclude, when we hold poor values or set low standards for ourselves and others, we essentially care about things that don't matter and can even make our lives worse. By choosing better values, we can focus our attention on things that truly matter, leading to improved well-being and generating happiness, pleasure, and success as byproducts. In essence, self-improvement is about prioritizing superior values and selecting more meaningful aspects of life to care about. When you care about better things, you encounter better problems and, ultimately, enjoy a better life. Whether we realize it or not, we are constantly making choices in our lives. We choose what we eat for today's breakfast. We choose what to wear. We choose the way we see things. Manson points out that even when we feel stuck or like we have no options, we are still making choices by deciding how we react to our circumstances. If we choose to blame others or external factors, we give away our power and control, making it harder for us to improve our lives. Mark Manson uses the example of a short man to illustrate this point. The short man in this example feels insecure about his height and believes it is the cause of his lack of success in dating and social situations. Manson explains that the short man has choices in how he deals with his insecurity. He could choose to accept his height and focus on improving other aspects of his life that are within his control, by working on his self-confidence, communication skills, and other qualities that make him more attractive and interesting. He could overcome his perceived disadvantage and have a more fulfilling social and dating life. However, the short man thinks he has no choice and can't change anything. He blames his height for his problems, feeling bitter and resentful, which leads to a self-defeating attitude and a lack of effort in trying to improve his social skills or confidence. It would likely result in a vicious circle, where the more frustrated he is, the less willing he is to actively socialize, making it even less likely that he will succeed. In fact, we always have choices in how we respond to our circumstances, and every decision we make, from the trivial to the significant, shapes our lives and experiences. Manson encourages us to take responsibility for our choices and understand that even an action is a choice with consequences. By acknowledging that we always have the power to choose, we can make more conscious and deliberate decisions that align with our values and priorities. Conversely, the author introduces the inspiring story of William James, a man who transformed his life by consciously choosing to take responsibility for his thoughts and actions. Despite being born into a wealthy family, William James suffered from numerous health issues and failures in his early life. His brother Henry James and his sister Alice James both later became writers. Struggling to find his place, William James dropped out of medical school and joined an expedition to the Amazon, only to fall severely ill. Returning home, he spiraled into depression. One night, inspired by philosopher Charles Peirce, James decided to conduct an experiment. For 1 year, he would believe he was entirely responsible for everything in his life and would strive to change his circumstances. If nothing improved, he would end his life. This experiment marked a turning point. James went on to become the father of American psychology, a renowned intellectual, and a Harvard professor. He married, had 5 children, and profoundly impacted the field of psychology. James' experiment, which he called his rebirth, demonstrates the power of taking responsibility for one's life and choices. What else can we draw from the rebirth? By embracing our freedom to choose, we can also accept responsibility for our problems and hardships. Instead of playing the victim or blaming external factors, we can choose to face our challenges head-on and actively work to overcome them. This mindset empowers us to take control of our lives, create meaningful change, and ultimately lead more fulfilling lives. Taking responsibility is what makes us great. We can't control what happens to us, but we can always control how we interpret them and how we respond. We are responsible for everything in our lives, even if something is not our fault. Jack's experience with obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, is a perfect example. Jack is a man suffering from OCD. Jack's OCD manifested as an irrational fear of germs, and it controlled his life. He would wash his hands until they were raw, avoid public places, and even wear gloves indoors. His condition made it difficult to work or maintain relationships. Although Jack didn't choose to have OCD, it was something he had to deal with. He chose to take responsibility for managing it instead of allowing his condition to dictate his life. He decided to see a therapist and commit to a course of exposure therapy, which involved gradually facing his fears and resisting compulsive behaviors. The therapy was challenging and uncomfortable, but Jack persisted. All in all, life is like a game of cards. You do not necessarily get the best cards. But does it mean that you will lose the game if you get terrible cards? No. The key is choosing how to play the cards. While we may not have control over every circumstance in our lives, We are always responsible for our choices and actions in response to those circumstances. By choosing to take control and face challenges head on, we can overcome obstacles and create meaningful change in our lives. In today's world, driven by the forces of positivity and consumer culture, we are surrounded by advertisements and social media posts that make us feel like we need to keep up with the latest trends and indulge in every opportunity that comes our way. In other words, we start to get used to saying yes to everything. Amidst all this pressure to say yes to everything, we have lost sight of the importance of knowing when to say no. We have become so focused on chasing the next big thing that we have forgotten how to set boundaries and protect our own well-being. But is it really good not to know how to say no? In fact, it can do much harm. There are times in life when we really need to put our foot down and say no. If we don't, we risk losing our sense of self and what is important to us. Imagine being at work, and your boss keeps piling on more tasks, even though you are already swamped. If you don't stand up for yourself and say no, you will end up drowning in work, leaving you stressed and burnt out. Or think about relationships. Suppose you always say yes to everything your partner wants without considering your needs. In that case, you will eventually lose your sense of identity and feel trapped in a one-sided relationship. We need to have boundaries and values to guide us in making decisions that protect our well-being and happiness. When we don't choose what is good or bad for us, or if we think we don't need to make choices at all, we turn into aimless wanderers with no direction in life. It is like being a ship without a compass, drifting along with no clear destination or purpose. In addition, what we say no to can define who we are as individuals. It is like when you are hanging out with your friends, and they want to go to a party where you know people will be doing stuff you are uncomfortable with. By saying no, you are not only standing up for your values but also asserting your identity as someone who prioritizes their well-being over fitting in. When we refuse certain things, we are not just expressing our values but also showing the world who we are as individuals. It's like assembling the puzzle pieces that make up our unique identity. And if we never say no to anything, it's as if we are just a blank canvas without any distinctive features, leaving us without a sense of who we truly are. To gain something valuable, you need to make sacrifices. Embracing one value often means making tough decisions and giving up other options. If you prioritize marriage, you will avoid casual flings. If you pride yourself on being open-minded and having strong interpersonal skills, you won't talk behind your friends' backs. All of these choices are commendable, but each requires saying no to something else. So it is essential to learn when to say no and stand up for our principles, so we can live a life that is true to ourselves and full of meaning. Nobody wants to feel trapped in an unhappy relationship, stuck in a job they dislike or distrust, or find life dull and monotonous. But unfortunately, many people end up in these situations. It is a common struggle that we have faced throughout history. Not saying no can also lead to blurred boundaries, which can affect relationships. Rejection sometimes makes for better relationships. Have you ever heard the story of Romeo and Juliet? Romeo and Juliet's families are engaged in a bitter feud, yet the young couple falls in love and goes to great lengths to be together, defying their families and societal norms. Their tragic love story ends with both of their deaths, bringing their families together in grief. According to the author, unclear boundaries in a relationship can mean either wanting the other person to take responsibility for themselves or taking too much responsibility for the other person. Such a relationship is not healthy. If Romeo and Juliet had set boundaries and made more reasonable choices, they might have found a way to be together without such a tragic outcome. Finally, learning to say no makes us freer. A concept in psychology called the paradox of choice states that when we are presented with too many options, it can lead to decision paralysis and increased stress. By mastering the art of saying no, we effectively narrow down our choices, making it easier to focus on what truly matters to us. It simplifies our lives and helps us build a strong sense of identity and purpose. Okay, that is all from the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Let's wrap it up. In The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, Mark Manson delivers a powerful message that challenges conventional self-help wisdom and encourages us to embrace a more authentic, value-driven way of living. Manson emphasizes the importance of choosing what truly matters to us and letting go of the things that don't. By doing so, we can avoid the emptiness, loneliness, and disconnection that result from caring too much about the wrong things. He also encourages us to find happiness in the struggle, to deal with pain and learn from it instead of chasing fleeting pleasures that often lead to dissatisfaction and disappointment. The book highlights the role of values in shaping our lives and behaviors. By adopting reality-based, socially constructive, and individually controllable values, we can make better choices and live more authentically. The process involves taking responsibility for every aspect of our lives, even when we face challenges that may not be our fault. This mindset empowers us to confront difficulties head-on and grow as individuals. Lastly, Manson teaches us the importance of setting boundaries and learning to say no. By refusing what doesn't align with our values and accepting rejection from others, we can strengthen our sense of self and develop a stronger, more genuine identity. This approach not only helps us preserve our values but also fosters deeper connections with others and promotes self-awareness. This is the end of today's Bookie. See you next time.